Okay, there we go. Right. The World Health Organization definition of health, as I was saying, it does not originally contain the spiritual component. I inserted that because it's not complete without that. But I want to be clear that when I use the term spiritual, I am not referring to any type of belief or religious system per se. I'm referring particularly to the human design, that there is an aspect of our being that allows us to connect to a deeper reality of life and deeper truth of reality that allows us to be able to function at a level of living that is beyond ordinary. It's extraordinary. It allows us to be able to tap into a dimension of living where we can tap into capacities and potentials that are of the human makeup. And this is every one of us. We are born and created this way. And this is all scientifically validated. And so a lot of what I'm sharing with you, you can validate it in quantum science, quantum biology, neuroscience, psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics. They all validate that there is an aspect of the human makeup, which we refer to as being spiritual, but it just allows us to be able to tap in to a dimension of reality and living and connect with that that makes living far more than what we know to be normal. And so while it's not necessarily referring to a belief or religious system, it does not necessarily exclude that. But I just wanted to be clear that I'm not referring to any particular type of system, but just the human design and how we are made up and how we are created. And so health is, first of all, it is a state that is complete. And I want to first, as we venture into this evening's talk, broaden our understanding and our perspective of what true health really is. And it is a state of being. And that state of being is complete in the entirety of our being, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and how that interconnects within the social framework of life to create a level of well being to where we can live disease free. That being our focus this evening. And not to think of health as the absence of disease. And in my 25 years of clinical practice, I've come across, I would say it's the general mindset of the average person that if we are not feeling sick and there are no symptoms in our body, we generally think that we are healthy. And that's not necessarily so. In fact, to think that we are healthy because there are no symptoms is a mindset that will lead us down that road to illness one day because we may not necessarily engage the principles and practices that ensures a physically well life if we think that we are already there. And so as we think about health, we must be thinking about our entire life. And so this is the context in which we want to be moving forward in, that when we say health, in my world and in what I teach in our workshops, health pertains to our whole life because physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and also financially. These are the components or the dimensions that are interconnected that determine the quality of life that we can live, which is internal, and the standard of living that we could enjoy and experience, which is external. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually pertains to our human makeup, our divine design, as I like to call it. And number 5 and 6, our social connections and being financially empowered pertains to this external reality, our standard of living. Now, sometimes it could become confusing that what we experience externally um, as quality of life, but quality of life really comes from inside. It's really an internal aspect of our experience, and that will become clearer as we move on. And quality and standard of living pertains to our external reality in terms of our achievements and our successes and all that falls under the realm of our material world, our material life. And so what is interesting and what we should note here is that every component or every aspect of our life is interconnected, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but socially and financially. None of it is separate. And when we understand this, we will also, it will become clear to us as how we can live our best life. And that's really the long and short of what our talk will be, is how we can live our very best life in every area and on every level of our existence. We also need to note that no area of our life is separate from the other, meaning that if we want to maximize in any one of these six areas, it can only be done in concert with the others because each area exists to serve the existence of the other. And that simply means that if we are going to optimize in any area, we need to optimize collectively each area because it is one whole life and we are one whole being. This is the true nature of health. And so improving our health is the most significant investment we can ever make because every area of our life runs through it. And so if we are going to be chasing life to try to have a better standard of living, if we want to improve our relationships, whether it be in our homes and our work, whether it be even in our communities in terms of the kind of polarizations they have today, if we want to improve our financial status in living and become more financially empowered, they rely entirely on our state of being, which we call health. Health is a complete state physically, mentally, spiritually, socially, and financially. Because I will also just throw this in here, even though this is not part of our discussion, that people today that I work with and communicate with, most people are struggling financially to one degree or the other. I want us to just note this for just food for thought. When we live in debt, which is perhaps most of us, if not all of us, to one degree. But living in debt is the external expression of what being sick or having disease is internally. So, what disease is to the body is what being in debt is to the external reality of our lives. And I want us to know that if we want to improve our lives, even financially and relationally, our relationships, that we must now live a healthy life personally. And it all fits together. And but this evening, our focus is on the physical wellness component of it. And just so, even as we talk about that, our understanding is that to become physically well, to improve our physical health, to recover from illness, and to live disease free, every area of our lives must be interconnected. And so, because we have not really understood health in this holistic context, because we think of health as just how the body feels and how the body functions, because we have been taught to just think of it in that narrow context, we have approached health and wellness and disease and healthcare, we have approached it in a narrow context of understanding that has not been serving us well. And so this is why we must be able to widen our perspective and understanding of what true health really is. And because of that, we are facing a global pandemic, what the World Health Organization calls the global burden of disease, which is affecting every country on the planet. Now, and I'm specifically speaking to what we call lifestyle diseases or non communicable diseases. But these are diseases that we develop over time and is induced by our lifestyle. And the figures are continuously escalating. In fact, the World Health Organization has said if you go onto their website, they predict or they project in the next decade that these figures that we have here are going to get worse. Most adults live with a lifestyle disease, and a large percentage of which have more than one. Most of the deaths on this planet, 50 million, happen from lifestyle disease. It accounts for 74% of global deaths. When it comes to the approach that we have for dealing with disease and sickness, and when I say sickness and disease, it's a spectrum. Sickness is just a lower on the spectrum. Disease has become a little bit more complex. But the approach that we have, which is mainly through external injections of pharmaceutical drugs, and even if you're in the holistic field and you're using natural remedies, but the approach that we have based on the understanding that health is about our body, how it feels and how it functions, etc., that has led us to approach that is not really addressing it. And the result is not only is it a global pandemic, but despite our increase in knowledge, understanding, our know how, and technology, it is still projected to get worse. Now, something evidently is missing in how we are approaching this, but there is nothing that is impacting negatively human well being and potential more than this one particular factor that we call sickness and disease or the whole healthcare model. Mental health disorders are significantly on the rise, and poor mental and physical health is accelerating aging and reducing our lifespan. But I want us to understand that what appears inside of the body as chronic disease is not the problem. That's just the outcome. So to focus on disease, on how to fix disease is a deficient approach based on an understanding that is narrow. Disease is not the problem, it is the outcome of a greater problem. And until we understand that health is about our whole life and it's not just about the body and how it feels and functions, will we begin to broaden our understanding, which will introduce elements that will change our approach. And that is what we're going to be talking about. The healthcare model today is based on an understanding that allows us to operate in such a way that the wheels of the system can only turn if we are getting sick. If people started to reduce illnesses and chronic disease started to reduce around the world, the more it reduced, the more there will be no need for the healthcare system. So the healthcare system only works because, and it requires constant influx of sickness and disease for the wheels to keep turning. And it's with that system that we're trying to reduce the incidence of sickness and disease, and that's not going to work. And so we need to go beyond this. So what we're going to do this evening is that we're going to be looking at two aspects. And you can find it here within this quotation that came from Thomas Edison, famous inventor. I'm sure we're all familiar with him. He said that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. I want to highlight two things. Will give no medicine. Now, to even think, considering how healthcare operates today, that it is even possible to function and live healthy without medicine. Well, I want us to know that we are in that time where this is possible because we have the knowledge, the understanding, and even technology that helps us to be able to do this. But now the key is understanding the cause of disease, inherent in which is how we can prevent it, and further inherent in that is how we can recover from any illness. What I'm going to share with you are principles and pathways or a concept of understanding based on a pathway of how we can recover from every illness and live a disease-free life. That is our focus, is physical wellness. But as I said earlier, the principles of it apply to every other aspect of our life. Why? Because health is wholeness and it encompasses every dimension of our life. So this is what we're going to be looking at. I'm going to look at the cause and how we can prevent illness, inherent in which is how we can recover from any illness. And when I say any, no holds bar. It doesn't matter if it is a tumor that's in your brain, a tumor that's on your liver, a terminal illness that you've been diagnosed with. It does not matter what it is. What I'm going to show you is how you can recover from any condition. Is it going to be easy? Not necessarily. Is it simple? The equation is simple. The process may not be, and that really is personal mentality to determine that. So that's what we're going to be doing as we move forward. Additionally, Thomas Edison introduced a technology in the 1800s that changed the world, which was the light bulb. And we're all using the light bulb today. Now, what he introduced was a transformative shift in how everybody perceived and understood and used light, which was open flames, whether it be in a lamp or a candle, to light up our spaces. And it took more than a generation before it became culturally accepted that this technology, how transformative it would be for the future. The reason why I bring this up is because I am also going to talk about a technology that harnesses no medicine, no chemicals, no ingredients, no external frequencies, no pills, no powders, no equipment, no medicine whatsoever. But it harnesses what resides within the human makeup to prevent disease and be proactive. So I'm going to talk about that technology. That technology does not resemble anything or any approach that currently fits into the healthcare model. That's what I'm also going to talk about. Why do we need technology? If we can learn what's causing and how we can prevent, because we live in a world today that the environment that we live in, the quality of food, even though we may make healthier choices, the quality of food today that we have to eat, and the environment and the world, the very nature of the world we live in today, we need to support. We need the support of technology, just as how technology has afforded us to become better at detecting, at monitoring, at delivering results in terms of helping the human body to recover. I'm going to talk about a simple technology that harnesses what is built into the human makeup, that we can actually become proactive, recover, and even prevent illness. So as it relates to how is it possible that we can live and we can enter into a recovery with no medicine? Well, it's possible because healing is human design. Healing is by design. It's inherent to us. In medicine, it's called innate healing. But innate healing is the creative flow of life woven into the very design of our makeup. Spontaneous remission or spontaneous healing arises when the inner harmony fully awakens it. Let me explain that a little bit. There is a natural creative flow of life that actually keeps us, that enlivens us, that animates this fleshly body. We call that spiritual potential. We call that the life force. We call that the source of life. Whatever we may call it, that name doesn't matter. But there is a source and a force that is our life. That built the body. It organized the body. And today it's running our bodies without us being consciously involved. That life force, that spiritual potential within that flow of life, which is continuously flowing through our very being on every level, that is what heals our body. It doesn't just heal a cut that we get, or it doesn't just mend the bone that the doctor can only set in place. It doesn't just mend the bone back. It's not just growing our hair when we cut it off. It's not just renewing cells, millions of cells every minute. New cells are coming back. Every 28 days, we lose a layer of skin and a new layer comes back. It's not just continuously remaking our bodies. Every 7 years, we have a brand new liver. It's been rebuilt. It's not just rebuilding that, it's continuously. It is the very healing potential of our bodies. It is the very thing that gives us life. Inherent in that is what heals our body. In medicine, there's something called spontaneous remissions, which is tens of thousands of cases, and you can do your own research on it, documented cases where people that are diagnosed with terminal conditions or life-threatening conditions of which there is no medical cure for it, and without any specific treatments, they completely recover from it. And I'm talking about conditions that are life-threatening, terminal, without medical cure. They have many cases like that. It's referred to in medicine as spontaneous remission, spontaneous simply meaning in this case, without a cause. They don't know what caused it, but it's just to say, and just that there is within the human design, not just within the body, because the body in itself, without the life of spirit, is just a corpse. But within our human design is this creative flow of life that's woven into our entire being that continuously remakes and heals our body. That is what creates this spontaneous healing. That's the flow why people miraculously recover. And for those who might be religious minded, I like to point out because we often don't see it. In the scriptures, there are numerous cases. In fact, some of the biggest accounts in scriptures where Jesus may have healed, of the biggest accounts, you'll see that he will always say in most of them, your faith has made you whole, or your faith has healed you, or your faith has made you well. It's never pointed to himself, to God, or some external entity. He always explained that. In other words, he's saying the catalyst that ignited this was in you. I'm just saying this to say that healing without medicine, is it possible? Absolutely, because the greatest and most potent and powerful healing force and potential resides within our human makeup. It's woven into our very being. Nothing can separate it from us. So if we are not well in whatever way and our body is not recovering and healing it, something is blocking that flow. That's all it is. And with spontaneous remissions, when you look at the research, and there's so much research that's out there on it, like for example, I would certainly recommend Dr. Jeffrey Ridiger's book called Cured, where he has studied it for 20 years, and he has documented in his book major pillars that are consistent with people who experience spontaneous remission. And interestingly enough, he points out that the number one pillar that brings about this thing called spontaneous healing, he calls identity. People returning back to understanding who they really are and what they possess. And that's a whole story, but it's worth looking at. But just to say, healing, friends, ladies and gentlemen, within you and within us, resides this potential. It's just we live, think, and be in such ways that hinders this flow. And if we can learn to remove what's resisting it, what's obstructing it, what's blocking it, that is, and we see it in the placebo effect as well, which is also very much recorded throughout medicine. Lots of experiments are done. But it's just saying that that's the power of belief. That's the power that we possess when we understand who we are and we live from that place. So I'm going to use this infographic to just help us to make a little bit more sense of it and see that a little bit more clearly. As we consider moving into our life and engaging in living, we must be aware that being precedes doing, and this is very important. Now, we are all aware that we must first be before we can do. But the thing is, we're not conditioned to think that way. So, doing is what moves this body through life, but being is what keeps it whole, keeps it in order, keeps it without defect. Being is what does that. And so, as we move through life, this must become part of the compass by which the GPS by which we are living from. You see, our clarity of purpose and our power of potential comes from our spiritual nature. And that is the true essence of our being. As spiritual beings, we are designed to resonate in harmony with truth, love, and all the positive energies that come from that. Peace, joy, gratitude, forgiveness, patience, humility, whatever it is. But all that flows from our true essence of being is everything that resonates with love and truth. This is the whole teaching in itself, which we have in our workshops, and I'm not going to get into that, but just so that we can understand as it relates to our topic this evening. But our state of being, our true essence of being is right here, spiritual, and the natural order of the flow of life comes from the inside out. It flows from spirit to soul to body. When our thoughts, emotions, and choices, when the aspects of our soul, mind, heart, and will, thoughts, emotions, and choices, this is the center of our being. This is our sense of identity. This is where our sense of being really emanates from. But when what's going on in our soul is not influenced or shaped by our essence of being, but is instead shaped by anything that is contrary to love and truth, it creates a tension right here. And this is something that we can understand. And how does that happen? That happens when our sense of identity comes from the outside rather than the inside. When we reverse or invert the flow of life, where our sense of identity or the awareness of ourself, which is how we are conditioned from birth. We are conditioned to look at life from the outside in and not the inside out. And that's why our spiritual sense of our spiritual nature is obscured to most of us, even though we may acknowledge it as a reality. We don't quite know how to conceptualize and understand it, that it could become part of our experiential reality. But when our awareness is tied to doing, which is externally, it's tied to doing, having, achieving, being seen, accepted, acknowledged, validated. When our sense of self comes from doing, when being is sacrificed for doing, what rules our life is driven by survival, reaction, and performance. Why? Because once our sense of identity comes from the outside in, we only see life through separation, not wholeness, not unity, not oneness. Once life flows from the outside in, it is a us and them. It's a win or lose. It's a me or you. It's life now becomes fractured to where everything is seen through separation, lenses of separation and division, as opposed to when life flows from the inside out, it is unity, oneness, harmony, despite what's happening on the outside. Now, just to be clear, all of us experience life right here in our soul. Life is not experienced externally, life is experienced internally. If our mind and heart, if we were to shut off our mind, we could be walking through life, going through all kind of circumstances and have no experience of it if we are comatose, if our minds were shut off. Experience of life happens all internally here. But when our sense of identity, when our awareness of reality is governed outside, this is what happens. When societal conditioning is what shapes our inner, we have that inner conflict, that tension within the soul, because it's contrary to what flows from the inside out. It's like a river that's flowing in one direction and we are now going against it. It creates a resistance. What happens is that when our sense of identity is caught up in our physical nature, our spiritual identity really becomes obscured and it does not inflect in our reality. This resistance is what creates stress and it leads to disease. Look at it this way. Stress is the tension within the soul arising from the resistance between two opposites, between who we truly are and who we have been conditioned to perform as. It's an inevitable consequence when doing replaces being. Now, think of it this way as it relates to sickness and disease. Disease, as I said before, is not the problem. Think of right in the center of our being. This is where we create our reality. When the guiding light of life, let's call that, flows and calibrates soul through body, we create the reality that we desire, because this is the creative center of our being. When, however, this becomes veiled, because the flow of life is inverted, because our identity is now external rather than internal, it comes like this. This guiding light, anything you put in the way of a light is going to cast a shadow. And so this block creates a shadow here in our bodies. It extends into our life as well, but we're talking about sickness and disease now. Sickness and disease that arises in the body is just a shadow that was cast because the light could not shine all the way through. What we need to do is remove this, free this up so that the light will show. That is what spontaneous healing is. That is what Dr. Jeffrey Rittiger discovered in his all 20 years of research, is that when people return to understanding that there's far more to their being, and they start to re-examine and reprioritize and reorganize life and change their whole perception of things, and this light starts to shine through, the body just responds. That is the simplicity of it, but it's a reality that is not easy to capture because it is a lot of its work. It is undoing a conditioning that takes time. But this societal conditioning that shapes us into a sense of identity, an egoic identity, which is rooted in our physical nature, whereas our sense of worth and value is attached to the external reality, to things and materialism, etc., that flow against the natural order. It creates that internal conflict, obscures our true identity, creates a resistance, and it comes up what we call stress. Stress is that inner conflict. Stress is not what we have been taught to think it is as well, and we'll show you how that works. Stress is the #1 cause of disease and dysfunction by all the authorities on the planet. The World Health Organization, the American Psychological Association, the Mental Health Foundation says that 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic or recurrent state of stress. Chronic means that it's an enduring problem. This is where stress really creates an issue. We are able to tolerate stress, but stress is something that happens for survival. But when it is constant, when it's recurring, when it's enduring, when it's continuously going, it's like a pipe that's just dripping on a concrete floor. Let it drip on that concrete long enough. You come back sometime in the future, it's going to have a little hole that the water has just dug from just dripping there. You can take a pencil and you can tap your finger with the pencil, and you can just keep tapping it over and over. And you can take it for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, after an hour, you're feeling it. After a day, it's beginning to swell. After a month, your whole fingers is not becoming damaged. That's what the constant recurring of stress does. It creates destruction inside our bodies. We just don't understand how that works, but I'll help you to understand that. Up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of all human illness and disease. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. It comes from the inside out. It is that inner conflict that we have. And we just need to understand what we call stress. This inner conflict is the hidden root of what stress is. We think that stress is all that's going on in the world, that all the bills we have to pay and the financial struggles and the relationship issues and the traffic we have to deal with and the boss that gives us, stress is not external at all. Stress is all internal. And I just made some points here to help us to connect to things that's relatable to all of us in here, to one way or the other. It is that inner conflict, and this is the hidden root of where stress comes from. It is privately experiencing life one way, but openly pretending it's another. How many of us really do that? And this is coming, looking at ourselves in the mirror and being deathly honest with ourselves. It is projecting a positive self-image, yet being concerned about what people think about us. It's saying we value truth, yet not be honest about how we really feel. It's wanting to be great, but shrinking ourselves to fit into the expectations of other people. It's desiring inner confidence, but yet wanting others to affirm our value. It's wanting to be healthy, but choosing habits that sabotage our well being. It's choosing your path of purpose, but fearing what others may say. It's thinking or feeling one thing, yet saying or doing another. It's wanting to believe and trust, but yet act out of fear and doubt. It is the inner conflict that we all go through, and that is conditioning. That happens when doing comes before being. Stress doesn't come from the outer circumstances, friends, but from how we perceive and respond to them, shaped by the internal framework of our mindsets, rooted either in egocentric or our spiritual identity, whether it's flowing from the inside or from the outside. This is the root. I'm giving us here the fundamental roots of where it all springs from. This is the seedbed from which all of these things, what we call sickness and disease, springs from. But all the other struggles that we have in life as well, it is the same model. So life is always perceived through the lens of our inner state. That's just how, because of how we're built. So when thoughts, emotions, words, and actions align as one seamless frequency, when there's no disparity between, there's no inner conflict, this is where peace, the opposite of stress, freedom, where our minds are free. This is the end of stress. The end of stress will follow. And this is what unlocks that inherent potential to heal. This is you and I taking responsibility for how we engage our living, learning and understanding how this works, and engaging the process. The beautiful thing about it is that we don't have to learn how to be spiritual or how to love and how to live by truth and how to be compassionate and how to be patient. We don't have to know how to learn those positive. It is who we are. What we have to do is remove the resistance. Just remove what's blocking and let it flow. It's an unlearning of some things. And we can call it the renewing of the mind. The challenge is that because of how the mind and heart has been conditioned externally, the body the body becomes conditioned to that. We call it sickness, we call it disease, we call it all types of different symptoms. So now here we are, we want to renew our minds and bring our lives back in order, but yet we have a body that has been conditioned that has to change as well. So we have to revert the order from instead of outside in, it has to flow from the inside out. How this relates and how it translates into disease, this is how this internal conflict or stress, as we call it, this is how stress becomes disease. The central nervous system in the human body is how we experience life. The central nervous system comprises the brain and the entire network of the nervous system that runs throughout our bodies. Turn the central nervous system off, and we have no experience. We have no emotions. We can't feel. We're like walking dead, so to speak. So, this is what creates the experience of life. Now, the central nervous system extends into what is called the autonomic nervous system, which controls all bodily functions. Everything that we have trillions of functions happening at this moment in the body, and we are not involved, it's happening automatically, and it's run by the autonomic nervous system, which has two branches. The first one is called the sympathetic nervous system. This system is what deals with what we call the stress response or the fight flight response. This is the one that, if there's an emergency or if there is a threat and we have to engage, this is what engages for us our survival mode. The problem is we have this running all the time. 60 to 80% of people on this planet, our lives day in, day out is jacked up on this. This is what's running it all the time. But when the sympathetic nervous system is activated by chronic stress, which is an inner conflict, it leads to all what we know as all kind of lifestyle diseases. This is all medically validated. See, because chronic stress produces the biochemical seedbed, what you can call oxidation and inflammation, which is the root of lifestyle diseases, gut inflammation, DNA damage, premature aging. It wrecks the body. Chronic stress creates that seedbed. And it's not that you have stress today and you have stress another time. It is that our system is constantly running on this because of because we have doing over being, because the life is conditioned from outside instead of inside. And that's just abbreviating it. And because we perceive life in a way how we've been conditioned to look at it. And so this is how most of us naturally run on this. Hence, we have this global pandemic that they project is going to get worse. So we are looking for solutions to try to deal with disease, but disease is not the problem. It is the outcome of a problem, and it is how we have been conditioned to interpret life and respond to life based on our identity, which even though we may acknowledge that we are spiritual beings, we don't understand how to appropriate that. And this is very central to it. The second part of the autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic system, and this one deals with healing and recovery. This is the system that becomes dominant in spontaneous remissions. This is activated when the mind and body becomes coherent. When not that we're thinking one way, but our body is feeling another, because how it's been conditioned over the years of stress. This is where there's inner peace. This is authenticity. This is where everything comes back into balance and homeostasis, optimal immune function, optimal cellular repair. All biological systems become coordinated and the whole heal. This is where that healing potential that's woven into the human system, that's where it starts to flow. This is where the blockages are removed. This is where peace replaces stress. When that happens, this system becomes engaged. And when that becomes engaged, what naturally happens when there are no blockages, when there's no resistance. I trust that you're following so far. Now, the regulatory state of our central nervous system can be observed through brainwave activity. And this is how in neuroscience we can tell a person's state of mind and state of being and why these things are happening. So when our inner state is influenced by negative thoughts and emotions, fear, worry, anxiety, guilt, etc., the brainwave activity shifts the body into sympathetic dominance. That's fight and flight. That's the stress response. Our brainwave activity shifts the body into that. On the other hand, when our inner state is one of harmony, balance, order, influenced by positive thoughts and emotions, the brainwave activity shifts the body into parasympathetic dominance. So we can know and we can measure these things through brainwave activity. Physical and emotional stress is this internal tug of war and this internal split between survival mode and restoration. And we bounce between the two, but we hang out in survival mode all the time. What I want to bring to our attention here is this. Positive thoughts and emotions does not only create and signal the stress response and the dominance that leads to sickness and disease, but the very central nervous system, the very thing that's governing this process, it destroys it. Negative thoughts and emotions shrinks the brain prematurely. It impairs its function. So it's not just signaling the wrong side of the nervous system that leads to illness, it's destroying the very fabric of what runs the system. And I'm saying that for us to emphasize that this is not just, oh, pop a pill and change it. This is, you need to engage cultivating and nurturing our minds and our hearts. It's required. On the other hand, positive thoughts and emotions, and this is all neuroscience research. Positive thoughts and emotions not only engages the parasympathetic system for healing and repair, but it improves how the entire central nervous system functions and it maintains it for years. No cognitive declines, better function across the board. See, so when brain waves align and are in order, the nervous system resets itself. Homeostasis is restored, and that's what we are aiming at. How we can do that? We can do that through engaging mindfulness practices, meditation, breath work. There are different tools that we can use to help us to be able to do that. But for us to understand that disease doesn't happen to us, we're not victims of disease. It evolves through us from our state of being. And the condition of our body is determined 100% by the spiritual life that animates it and sustains it, whether it is flowing through or whether it is hindered. And that's the long and short of it. So to conclude on that, to unlock that natural flow of healing, which is engaging self-care over healthcare, to release it is to harmonize thoughts, emotions, words, and actions to be one and the same. Not that we think one way and we speak another, or we feel one way and we act another. It must be one, it must be seamless. This is alignment. When we can live at this level, this dissolves that inner conflict and the parasympathetic system becomes dominant. And this is where prevention of disease, healing and recovery of any condition happens. Now, this is a spectrum. It starts slowly and it can become, and it's all a matter of how much we're going to engage. From my work and my experience, the majority of people find it difficult to engage the number one practice that changes all of this, which is meditation. And so I'm a very big proponent of meditation and mindfulness and metacognitive type exercises that we engage. We must do that so that we can get that mind-body harmony and balance and get our systems back into homeostasis. This is not an easy thing to do. And a lot of people find it difficult. We are so busy trying to make ends meet and trying to make a living that we really don't even have time to live, far less engage in practices like this. But what if there was a way to get our brainwave activity to resemble a mind that was in order? What do you think would happen? What if there was a way to synchronize brain waves to resemble an orderly functioning and coherent mind? What would happen is that the body will begin to reflect that state. So what if we could remove the resistance so that the brainwave activity can synchronize into order? The body will naturally respond. That would be incredible, because getting into things like meditation and mindful practices is doing exactly that. And all the research has shown, and there's so much documented evidence that people are going to these deep states of transcended states of meditation, the spontaneous healing that just happens right there. Lots of evidence. Anyway, you can do your research and you can see. But what if there was a way that we can get there without going through that process? And that's the technology that I want to introduce you to. There is a technology that has come, and I use it to support my work and to support my own life. A technology that harnesses brainwave activity so naturally, and I mean so naturally, that it makes our brainwave activity look to resemble as though our minds are in that state of order. And what happens is our body begins to reflect that state. That whole healing response begins to happen. And here's the magic. When the body starts to feel better, it's a feedback loop. And you will know that for yourself. When you start to feel physically better, your mind becomes more positive. The mind becomes more open. And as the mind becomes more positive, the body. So the way is opening up more and more. This is the technology I'm going to share with you. It is the only technology of its type that has existed. It's relatively new. And what I love about it, it is 100% natural in that it's harnessing this innate capacity that we are born with, and it's built in and woven into our system. It taps into that and it begins to free that up. This is this is a new era and a completely new approach. This technology was developed by this gentleman. His name is Jay Dhaliwal. He's a software engineer, a massively successful guy. He made this statement, and the reason why I'm going to emphasize this, I'm here to build something generational that will transform the world. He said anything else is a waste of time. Now, why I highlight this statement is because this statement followed a journey that brought him to making this statement. And why it also impresses me is that he did not create a technology to create a business to make money. He started out by looking for a solution for his mother who suffered with multiple sclerosis and was given a period of time to live because from a boy, she has had that and she has been deteriorating over the years because there is no medical cure for it. It's a neurodegenerative problem. And when he became very successful, he spent $25 million of his own money searching the world, working with the most brilliant of minds to find a solution, only to find out that there's no medical solution. And when he asked the question to the neuroscientist, why is the brain not sending the signals to the muscles as it should? And there is no clear answer. And as a software engineer asking these questions, after 15 years of research and development, he found out using Nobel Prize science that's already existing, he connected the dots together and came up with such a simple solution, but with such profound and powerful application to human well-being, not just the body, the human well-being. I'm going to show short videos, about an hour, maybe a minute and 40, less than 2 minutes of a video where he is going to be doing an EEG, which is how you measure brainwave activity. He does an EEG experiment to show how his technology works. Then I'm going to explain briefly how that works, show you what he's done, and then and then we'll conclude. So this is a demonstration. He calls it vibrotactile trigger technology. And this is a very short experiment here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about our Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrincat, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So Vox Life HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
Well, the technology is complex, but it's simple and it's very powerful. So what we have to understand, what he demonstrated there is looking at brainwave activity, and we know that brainwave activity is a reflection of the activity of the mind. So we can tell a person's state of mind or state of being by extension by their brainwave activity. And the demonstration that he did, those of anybody who may be familiar with, and if you don't, you can research it. When it comes to these live brain scans, we know that the red and yellow colors are all relative to restless and chaotic type functioning of the brain, and green is always representative of more orderly and more coherent and more orderly functioning of the brain. Now, to think that you can just stick a patch that has no medicines, no chemicals, no frequencies, no ingredients, nothing on it, but it can have that, but it can make the brain resemble somebody who has been meditating in a deep state for a long time. That is absolutely phenomenal. The impact that that has on our physiology as well as our mentality is quite profound. Now, how it works, oops, why did I go back?
Hi, everyone. Today,
if we link the link between the brainwave activity and the nervous system, as we said before, brainwave activity influences the autonomic nervous system by signaling either sympathetic dominance or parasympathetic dominance. And that depends on the nature of the frequency of the brain waves. In other words, our state of mind, our state of thoughts and emotions. So based on that, now we're looking at ways of how we could actually synchronize brainwave activity to resemble a brain that's functioning in order. In other words, we are removing the resistance of the chaotic or dysregulated function. And so now the innate healing, that innate intelligence that runs the body, that repairs the body, just begins to flow more freely. And it's built on Nobel Prize research, which basically, just to abbreviate this, is that we know that every atom within the human body, every cell of the human body receives and transmits electromagnetic frequencies. That is what led us to things like MRIs and EEGs and EKGs and so on. Then there's other Nobel Prize research on which the technology is built on, where it was discovered by these two Nobel Prize laureates that embedded within the skin are what they call piezoelectric channels, which converts texture, vibration, and temperature into bioelectrical signals, which the brain interprets as information. Now, to understand this, it will be easier to understand like how a QR code works. We know we can look at a QR code. This is a QR code for my website. You wouldn't know that by looking at it, but it's a series of patterns. And if my camera scans this QR code, it converts this visual pattern into a digital signal and it unlocks the data that this represents. In a very similar way, Superpatch has discovered that how to create micro patterns on a patch. No chemicals or medicines needed, where the piezoelectric channels on the skin can act like similarly, like how the camera would, it scans the tactile pattern that's embedded into the patch and converts that stimuli into bioelectrical signals and sends it to the brain. When that signal goes to the brain, it's integrated into the brainwave activity. And according to this pattern, will determine what part of the brain it will go to and synchronize. That's the simplicity of it. So we have different neural pathways responsible for different functions of the body. Each patch has its own tactile pattern. When the piezoelectric channel scans it, sends the signal to the brain, to that part of the brain that's responsible for a particular mental or physiological function, and it synchronizes those brain waves and it releases the healing potential relative to that part of the mind or the body. After 15 years of research and development, vibrotactile technology has now become peer-reviewed and published science in some of the major journals around the world. So this is not anything experimental. This is all established bona fide science, which is attracting attention from major medical symposiums around the world now. Last year, the Superpatch company presented their groundbreaking technology at the World Congress of Pain, the European Sleep Society, and the World Congress of Psychiatry. And so this is a technology that is so simple that it harnesses that innate capacity that resides within. And when the mind and body are harmonized through brainwave synchronization, the mind becomes more orderly, biological systems become more coordinated, and this reestablishes homeostasis, optimizing the body's potential to heal and repair. So far, the company has developed and discovered 13 patterns that correspond with 13 different neural pathways that synchronizes these areas to bring about change in the body. Now, why this is important is because the central nervous system, the brain, doesn't just govern physiological function in the body. The brain processes thoughts and emotions, which is the psychological aspect of our life. So when you start to harness and bring the brain into more coordinated function and orderly, you are enhancing not just physiology, but mentality. What am I saying here? What I'm saying is that people that want to reorder their lives, to get the flow from inside out, that is an unlearning and a relearning or a renewal of our mind, which can be a tedious task, and most people find it to be an upstream paddle to make these type changes. Superpatch is not just bringing about a healing response in our body in 13 various ways, but it's also bringing the mind and brain into an orderly function to where the process is now more accessible and it no longer feels like it's an upstream paddle. And so these are mind-body solutions where we can get the body to start to function in a way that the mind is now resembling a more orderly function. This is an era. This is ushering in an era of wellness, an understanding of things, an approach to wellness that is going to revolutionize the wellness industry because this has never been done before, where you can actually impact physiology and psychology without introducing any elements, just using your body's own system to harness its own system to resemble balance, that it will function orderly. And that creates a platform, opens a pathway, takes us through a doorway to where we can, that is literally transformative in our lives. And so this is science that is going to be the future of things to come. We don't have to worry about contraindications and medications, and it's completely safe, it's easy to use, it's safe for children, it's FDA registered. This is physical and mental wellness at its best. And so this is a technology that is going to be the future of things. Mind body harmony is the key to homeostasis, and that unlocks that potential within. So you see, if we live with a suboptimal neurology, which is what most of us do because of that stress response, it takes us down a spiral. And the first indication that that balance is happening is when we don't have enough energy. And that thing spirals down over time. It drips, drips, drips. It keeps dripping until one day it's going to start to create various forms of illnesses in our body, and then we blame it on age. But we want to keep our neurology optimal. And while the patches help to synchronize and help to balance and help to do that, we want to now engage a responsible way of living, thinking, and being. Not just so that our bodies function well or that we can recover from illness, but that we can have the best quality of life that we can ever dream of. Because when life flows from the inside out, we create the reality that we desire. And so the patch that you saw Jay demonstrated, which is the Liberty patch, these are all their clinical studies, which are on our websites that you can look at. It improved balance and stability by more than 33%, better range, and you can demonstrate this, and you can see the difference in a matter of seconds when you put before and after using the patch. The Defend, which is for the immune system, in my 25 years of clinical practice, I have to tell you, I have not come across anything that upregulates immune function faster and more efficient than the Defend patch. For pain is something that debilitates a lot of people. You're going to get pain-free without having to use any type of chemicals that interacts with your liver, your kidneys, and within your bloodstream. People who are into athletic performance, this is going to significantly increase your athletic performance. I use it when I go to the gym. I mean, anybody who's into any kind of performance and they stick this patch on, you'll tell the difference right away. And it's not that you have to wear it for a period of time to work into your system. You go into the gym, you stick it on now, and as soon as you start to exercise, it's there. More strength, more power, you feel the difference. Energy, forget the energy drinks. Those things are toxic to your body and they damage your brain. You want to have sustained and increased energy. This is not stimulant energy like these drinks. This is clean energy coming from the inside and enhanced alertness. For those who may want to get off the extra pounds and you're not able to burn the extra calories because of maybe the job or so that you may have, you can now burn 25% more calories at rest by enhancing the energy utilization mechanisms from the inside out. Healthy skin, glowing skin, a healthy complexion, minor issues with your skin, this clears it up. This keeps our skin very healthy. For the men who as we get older, we tend to lose that virility, our masculine function tend to decline. This is the rocket patch is going to pick you up and have that in order. This is perhaps, I think, one of the most significant patches that the company has produced, which is for sleep, because most people, even though they may not be aware, we do not get REM sleep. We do not get the type of sleep that is regenerative and restorative, where the body heals and repairs, including repairing and healing the brain itself, happens during sleep. But when we get to that level, that deep REM sleep. This patch does that. I always thought that I never had an issue with sleeping, and I started using this, and I can tell the difference. One of my favorite patches is the Peace patch, which is dealing with stress, anxiety, and you're feeling overwhelmed. You put on this patch, within a matter of moments, you're going to feel centered. But my great love for this patch is because of how it balances the autonomic nervous system and keeps things better regulated. This has far-reaching implications in terms of what it means for how your biology is working. More focus, more concentration, mental clarity, memory, the focus patch. Absolutely, all of the patches are exceptional. Nothing in terms of external remedies like supplements will work like how these work. In saying that, let me also say these do not replace nutrition. This is functional. This is self-care at its best, but you need to also be mindful of all the other aspects of a healthy body, proper nutrition, exercise, etc. The joy patch, you're feeling depressed, your mood is down, your mood is low. This lights up the area of your brain, synchronizes the brainwave activity to where it lifts your mood and you have a more positive disposition. For those that are struggling with addictions and habits, food cravings, and so on, and this also it's not just external addictions, but internal as well. People who have difficulty in dealing with overthinking and worrying, and they have habitual patterns of thinking that they find difficult to break. This can also help with things like that. And so our brain waves is an expression of that inner state. It is an expression of the being side and not the doing side. And so a brain in sync brings the body into balance. And when our brain waves are synchronized in order, this nurtures that natural flow of healing, vitality, and an elevated state of well being. When we synchronize patches together, there are various patches that we can synchronize that then broadens the scope of what it's doing with our brains and our brainwave activity and takes us into wider and deeper dimensions of wellness when they're combined together. They're very easy to use. To just simply peel it off and you can stick it pretty much anywhere on your body. The patches last for 24 hours. And what I'm introducing to you here, ladies and gentlemen, is a technology that is going to change the future of wellness. And I like to emphasize that this is self-care above healthcare. The patches, when it comes to real world application, is supported by the SuperPatch Scientific Advisory Board. These doctors work along with the research and development team to help to make sure that everything is that compliance, integrity, and everything is out of. These are all doctors that have published papers and they're well recognized all within themselves there. So I want to invite you as you consider your life. Because this evening, if I had to encapsulate it, I'll say it's about your life and it's about how to engage it at a level of living where you can maximize your potential on every area, in every area, and on every level of life. But as it pertains to your physical well-being, your body, how it feels, how it functions, how it recovers from illness, how you can prevent, how you can be proactive, I want to encourage you to look at super patches. There's nothing else in the world at this point that exists that is anything like this. This is, I like to call it advanced self-care solutions for super well-being, and it's tailored for you, by you, because when you apply the patches and you start to synchronize brainwave activity, it is the innate intelligence that determines the process of how it affects that internal change. It is guided by innate intelligence. It is guided by the inner wisdom that exists. And you can't get more optimal than that. We have a Facebook Patch and Go community. It has thousands, and then there are other communities that literally there are tens of thousands of testimonies of how these patches are impacting people's lives around the world. And for those of you who may want to access it, you would have either, whether you got here through my Facebook ad, whether it was that one of our associates might have brought you on, you can inquire about how you can begin to use them. But I want to encourage you that while you may be using the patches to deal with some type of physical ailment or to elevate and enhance your overall well-being, physically and mentally, that do not separate what I talked about in the beginning about how we engage life holistically. A healthy life is looking at life in every dimension. The first four aspects of it, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that's our inner well-being. And that inner well-being, which is our quality of life, is what determines our standard of living on the outside. And so we have a global business community. You can either access the ways where you can access the patches, either as a business owner or as a consumer. The choice is up to you. Tomorrow evening, I speak about this because if we don't, when it comes to financial empowerment, if we don't own business, if we don't understand the rudiments of finances, if we don't understand the ins and outs of commerce, a job will not keep us when we get down in our years, in our later years. Jobs don't do it anymore, and you need to be able to have something that is scalable in a way that is financially sustainable. Superpatch offers an opportunity to people who are looking for that. I'm not going to get into that because it may not be for everybody, but for those who may want to explore that tomorrow evening at 6:30, I speak about that. And that session is more interactive where I make it available where you can ask questions about anything that was presented this evening. You can ask questions about what was presented in terms of the economic model that they have created, which is incredible and unique. You can ask about that, or you can ask anything about the technology at tomorrow's session. If you're interested in that, you can request the link from myself or from any of our partners that might have invited you onto the call this evening. And so with that, I want to say thank you to each and everyone for taking the time and being on and giving me the opportunity to share this information with you. I thoroughly enjoy doing all this because my passion is being able to influence and impact people's lives in a positive way because of what has happened in my own life. I want to share that with everyone. Not just the patches. The patches just happen to be the perfect tool that fits seamlessly into my work of whole living. And it will, and any person, in fact, let me just say this, any practitioners that's on the call, if you're a healthcare practitioner, a medical doctor, if you're a therapist, if you're a life coach, if you're into transformation, if you're into sports, any professional that dealing with human well-being, these patches are a good complement to it. Not just for your own personal self, but in your work. They're phenomenal and they work exceptionally well. With that, I want to say thank you for each and every one. Again, you can speak to any of our partners or me and request a copy of the video if you want to go over some of the information again. So God bless you. Thank you very much. And for those of you who are interested, we'll see you tomorrow evening at 6:30.